I am Jacqueline, 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my brother Derek has treated me like his personal, unpaid babysitter. This Christmas was supposed to be different. I had promised myself I would finally stand up to him. When he pulled out his planner at dinner and announced, "You will watch the kids for a week while we cruise the Caribbean," something inside me snapped. Little did he know, his perfectly planned vacation was about to unravel. Before I continue my story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. If you have ever had family members who took your time for granted, hit that subscribe button for more stories about standing up for yourself. Growing up, I always felt like I lived in Derek's shadow. 3 years older than me, he was the golden child of our family, the star athlete, the straight-A student, and later, the successful businessman with the picture-perfect family. Meanwhile, I carved out my own path as a graphic designer, working primarily from home for various clients across the country. I love my job because it gives me creative freedom and flexibility. But unfortunately, my family has always seen that flexibility as availability. Since I was 12 years old, Derek would drop his responsibilities on me without a second thought. Back then, it was watching his stuff or covering for him when he snuck out with friends. As adults, it evolved into babysitting his 3 children: Emma, 8, Lucas, 6, and little Sophia, just 3 years old. "Jacqueline, can you watch the kids this afternoon? Jennifer has a hair appointment, and I have a meeting," he would say, already walking out the door before I could respond. Or, "Hey sis, emergency at work, dropping the kids off in 20 minutes. Thanks." These were not requests but announcements, always last minute, always assuming I would say yes. Our parents, Martha and Robert, enabled this behavior from the beginning. "Your brother has so much on his plate," Mom would say. "It is just a few hours, Jacqueline. Family helps family." Dad would add, "Derek is building his career. These are important years for him," as if my time, my career, my life held less value than his. Do not misunderstand me. I adore my nieces and nephew. Emma with her curious mind and endless questions about my design work. Lucas with his mischievous smile and love for building elaborate Lego structures. Little Sophia who would curl up in my lap for story time, her tiny fingers tracing the pictures. I love being their aunt, but I resented being treated like the family daycare service. The breaking point came last summer when Derek and Jennifer decided to take a weekend trip to celebrate their anniversary. They informed me 3 days before, assuming I would take the children from Friday to Sunday. I had to cancel a date and reschedule an important client meeting. When they returned, there was not even a proper thank you, just a generic souvenir magnet from their hotel and a casual, "The kids were good, right? Knew you could handle it." After that incident, I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Catherine Wilson, who helped me recognize these unhealthy patterns. "What you are describing is a lack of boundaries," she explained during one session. "Your family has conditioned you to prioritize their needs above your own, and they take advantage of your kindness." For months, we worked on exercises to help me establish boundaries, role-playing conversations where I practiced saying no, writing letters to express my feelings that I would never send, identifying my own needs and learning that prioritizing them did not make me selfish. Setting boundaries is not about punishing others, Dr. Wilson reminded me. It is about teaching people how to treat you with respect. Sometimes that process is uncomfortable, but it is necessary for healthy relationships. By December, I felt stronger, more centered, more aware of my worth. I promised myself that the next time Derek or anyone in my family took advantage of my time, I would stand my ground. Little did I know that opportunity would come on Christmas Day, in front of our entire family, with a Caribbean cruise as the battleground. Christmas has always been a big production in our family. Mom spends days preparing her signature dishes: honey-glazed ham, scalloped potatoes with 3 kinds of cheese, green bean casserole with the crispy onions that Dad loves, and her famous apple pie with homemade vanilla ice cream. The dining room transforms with her best china, the silverware that only comes out for special occasions, and centerpieces she creates herself from pine branches and cranberries. This year was no different. I arrived at my parents' suburban home at 2 in the afternoon, arms loaded with carefully wrapped presents. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Christmas music played softly in the background, and the tree in the corner sparkled with ornaments collected over decades, each with its own story. Derek, Jennifer, and the kids were already there. Emma and Lucas were playing a board game with Grandpa, while Jennifer helped Mom in the kitchen. Sophia toddled around in a red velvet dress, curls bouncing with each step. Derek sat in Dad's recliner, scrolling through his phone, barely looking up when I entered. "Aunt Jackie," Emma spotted me first, abandoning the game to throw her arms around my waist. Lucas followed, and soon Sophia joined the group hug, her little hands sticky with whatever treat Grandma had given her. "Merry Christmas, Munchkins," I laughed, balancing the presents while returning their hugs. "I have got something special for each of you under that tree." Dinner went, as it always did. Dad carved the ham with surgical precision. Mom fussed over whether the potatoes were too dry. Derek dominated the conversation with stories about his recent promotion, while Jennifer interjected with updates about the children's achievements. I sat quietly, enjoying the food and the chaotic warmth of family, despite the underlying dynamics. It was during dessert when Derek cleared his throat and pulled a leather-bound planner from his pocket. The kind of expensive planner that successful businessmen carry to important meetings. He placed it on the table next to his half-eaten slice of pie and flipped it open with flourish. "Jennifer and I have some exciting news," he announced, looking around the table with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "We have booked a cruise to the Caribbean for the second week of January. 7 days, 6 nights, on the Royal Caribbean oasis of the seas. How wonderful!" Mom clapped her hands together. "You two deserve a nice vacation." "That sounds fantastic, son," Dad added, raising his wine glass in approval. "It is going to be amazing," Jennifer gushed, touching Derek's arm affectionately. "We have been planning this for months. Spa treatments, fine dining, excursions to 3 different islands." As they continued describing their upcoming luxury vacation, I noticed Derek's eyes dart toward me. A familiar feeling settled in my stomach, the sensation of being volunteered before being asked. "The cruise leaves January 8th, Derek continued, turning his planner so I could see where he had highlighted the dates. "So, Jacqueline, you will watch the kids that week. We will drop them off on the 7th, since we need to be at the port early the next morning." Not a question, not a request, a statement, an expectation, an assumption that my time belonged to him. "You will watch the kids." 5 words that encapsulated years of taking advantage, years of assuming I had nothing better to do, years of treating my time as less valuable than his. The table fell silent, all eyes turning to me. Mom looked hopeful, Dad expectant, Jennifer already mentally packing her swimsuits. The children continued eating their dessert, unaware of the tension suddenly filling the room. I began, feeling the weight of expectation pressing down on me. Dr. Wilson's voice echoed in my head. "Your needs matter too." "I cannot do that, Derek. I have plans in January." His fork clattered against the plate. "What plans? You work from home. You can watch them while you work." "I have client meetings scheduled. And a life of my own," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You should have asked me before booking your cruise." "But we already paid for it," Jennifer interjected, her voice rising slightly. "It is non-refundable, Jacqueline." Mom jumped in, her peacemaker instincts activating. "Surely you can rearrange your schedule, dear. It is only for a week, and they have already made all the arrangements. The kids love staying with you," Dad added, as if that settled everything. I felt myself wavering under the collective pressure. The familiar urge to acquiesce, to keep the peace, to be the good daughter and sister crept up my spine. But then I remembered all the canceled plans, the rescheduled meetings, the dates that never happened because Derek needed a babysitter. "I am sorry, but I cannot do it this time," I said, more firmly than I had intended. You need to find another solution. Derek's face hardened. We will talk about this tomorrow, when you have had time to think about it. I am sure you will see reason. The conversation shifted awkwardly to other topics, but the tension remained. When I left that night, I drove home alone, hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, heart pounding with a mixture of guilt and indignation. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to my brother in front of the family, but I knew the battle was far from over. As I pulled into my driveway, I made a decision. This time would be different. This time, I would not cave in. This time, I would protect my boundaries, even if it meant disappointing everyone. Back in my apartment that night, I paced the floor, unable to sleep. My phone had already buzzed several times with messages from Mom encouraging me to reconsider, reminding me how much the cruise meant to Derek and Jennifer, how they rarely got time alone together. Each message twisted the knife of guilt a little deeper, but also strengthened my resolve. At midnight, I called my best friend Rachel, knowing she would still be awake watching Christmas movies with a glass of wine. "He did what?" she exclaimed after I explained the situation. "On Christmas? In front of everyone? Without even asking you first?" "Classic Derek," I sighed, curling up on my couch with a throw blanket. "He has always been like this. He plans his life and expects everyone else to accommodate him." "And you always do," Rachel pointed out, not unkindly. "That is why he keeps doing it, Jack. You have trained him that your answer will always be yes." "Well, not this time," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "I am done being the family doormat." Rachel was silent for a moment. "I am proud of you, but you know they will not make this easy. What is your plan?" I had not thought that far ahead. My refusal at dinner had been instinctive, a knee-jerk reaction to years of built-up resentment. But Rachel was right. I needed a plan. Derek would not simply accept my no. "First, I need to practice what to say when he calls tomorrow," I said, thinking aloud. "He will try to guilt-trip me, or minimize my plans, or promise it is the last time." "Role-play it with me," Rachel suggested. "I will be Derek. Call me right now." For the next hour, Rachel threw every manipulative tactic at me that Derek might use. "But we already paid for it. The kids will be so disappointed. What could you possibly have planned that is more important than helping family? Mom will have to watch them if you do not, and you know her back has been bothering her." Each time, I practiced holding my ground, keeping my voice calm but firm, not over-explaining or apologizing excessively. By the end of our call, I felt more prepared, more centered. The next morning, I took action. First, I booked a cabin at Blue Ridge Mountain Retreat, a peaceful getaway about 3 hours from the city. I had been wanting to visit for months, and now I had the perfect excuse. I reserved it for the exact dates of Derek's cruise, January 7th through 14th, paying extra for the non-refundable rate to eliminate any temptation to cancel. Next, I scheduled client meetings throughout that week, filling my calendar with legitimate work commitments that could not be rescheduled. I even reached out to potential new clients I had been meaning to contact, arranging introductory video calls during that period. Then I sat down at my desk and wrote a note to leave on my door. "Derek and Jennifer, I am unavailable to watch the children during your cruise. As I mentioned at Christmas dinner, I have prior commitments that cannot be changed. Please respect my decision and make alternative arrangements. I hope you enjoy your vacation. Jacqueline." I printed it out in large, clear font, slipped it into a plastic sheet protector against the January weather, and set it aside. I would tape it to my front door on January 7th, the day they planned to drop off the kids. That afternoon, my phone rang. Derek's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath, recalling my practice session with Rachel, and answered. "Have you come to your senses?" he asked without preamble. "My answer is still no, Derek," I replied calmly. "I have commitments that week that I cannot break." "What commitments?" he demanded. "You never do anything important." The dismissal of my entire life stung, but I refused to take the bait. "My time is valuable to me, even if it is not to you. I have work meetings and personal plans that have been set for weeks. Reschedule them, he said, as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. No, I replied simply. You need to find another babysitter. Mom cannot watch them all week. She has her book club and volunteer work. That is not my problem to solve, I said, surprised at how steady my voice remained. You are their parents. Figure it out, he scoffed. This is so selfish, Jacqueline. After everything we have done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Derek? I asked, genuinely curious about what he thought he had contributed to my life. The question caught him off guard. He sputtered for a moment before recovering. We are family. That is not how this works. Family helps each other. Yes, family helps each other when asked respectfully, not when demanded without consideration. And it goes both ways. I took another deep breath. I am not available that week. Period. I have to go now. I ended the call before he could respond, my hands shaking but my mind clear. Within minutes, my phone lit up with texts from Jennifer, then Mom, then Dad. I silenced it and placed it face down on the coffee table. That evening, I had an emergency session with Dr. Wilson, who listened attentively as I recounted the events and my response. You should be proud of yourself, Jacqueline, she said when I finished. Setting boundaries is difficult, especially with family, and especially when those boundaries have never existed before. But what if I am being selfish? I asked, voicing the doubt that had been nagging at me. What if I should just help them this one time? Is it selfish to expect basic respect? She countered. Is it selfish to want your time and plans to be considered valuable? Or is it selfish of them to assume you have nothing important in your life and should drop everything whenever they want something? Put that way, the answer seemed obvious. Still, I spent the rest of the holiday week researching articles and books about family dynamics and healthy boundaries. Each resource confirmed what Dr. Wilson had been telling me. That my feelings were valid, that setting boundaries was not only acceptable, but necessary for healthy relationships, and that the discomfort I was experiencing was a normal part of changing established patterns. As New Year's passed and January began, I strengthened my resolve through daily meditation and journaling. I arranged for a neighbor to collect my mail and water my plants while I was away. I packed my suitcase, loaded my car with groceries and supplies for the cabin, and prepared for whatever storm might come when Derek and Jennifer realized I was serious. January 7th arrived with a flurry of snow and biting wind. I had been up since dawn, finishing last-minute preparations for my trip. My suitcase waited by the door. My laptop and work materials were carefully packed. The refrigerator was emptied of perishables. The thermostat was lowered to save energy while I was gone. At 9:30, I taped the note to my front door, then retreated inside to wait. Derek had texted the night before. Dropping kids off at 11 tomorrow. Make sure you have enough groceries. Not asking if the time worked for me. Not confirming I was even going to be home. Just another demand disguised as information. I watched through the window as their silver SUV pulled into my driveway at 10:45, 15 minutes early. Derek always prided himself on punctuality, though, in this case, I suspected he hoped to catch me unprepared, to force my hand by arriving before I could leave. From my vantage point, I observed them unloading the vehicle. Derek popped the trunk, while Jennifer opened the back doors to unbuckle the children. Emma jumped out first, already reaching for her purple backpack. Lucas followed, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. Jennifer lifted Sophia from her car seat, balancing the toddler on her hip, while Derek gathered 2 large suitcases. They approached my front door, the children running ahead excitedly. Emma reached it first, her hand raised to knock. When she stopped, I saw her small head tilt to the side as she noticed the note. She called to her parents, pointing. Derek reached the door, read the note, then read it again as if the words might change. His shoulders stiffened. He turned to Jennifer, gesturing at the paper with sharp, angry motions. She shifted Sophia to her other hip, leaned in to read, then stepped back, mouth opening in what looked like shock. My phone began to ring. Derek's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It immediately rang again, and again, and again. After the fifth call, I answered. "Hello, Derek. What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice tight with anger. "We are standing outside your door with the kids and luggage. Open up." "The note explains everything," I replied calmly. "I told you I was unavailable this week. I told you to make other arrangements." "This is ridiculous," he exploded. "You cannot just decide at the last minute to bail on us." "I did not decide at the last minute," I corrected him. "I told you at Christmas dinner, almost 2 weeks ago, that I could not do it. You chose not to believe me or take me seriously." "Where are you?" he demanded. "Are you even home?" "No, I am not," I said truthfully. "I am about to leave for my own vacation, that I planned and paid for, just like you planned and paid for yours." Jennifer's voice came through the phone now. She must have taken it from Derek. "Jacqueline, please," she said, her tone a practiced mix of disappointment and manipulation. "We have been looking forward to this for months. The ship leaves tomorrow morning. What are we supposed to do with the children?" "Whatever you would have done if I did not exist," I replied. "Hire a babysitter, ask friends, take them with you. Those are all options that do not involve taking my time for granted." "I cannot believe you are doing this to us," she said, her voice hardening. "After all the times we have included you in family events, all the birthday presents we have given you, all the times we have had you over for dinner." It was fascinating how quickly her mask of sweet sisterly affection dropped when she did not get what she wanted. Those family events she mentioned had always been on their terms. Those birthday presents, often thoughtless gift cards. Those dinners, usually occasions where I ended up helping with the kids while they socialized. "I am not doing anything to you," I clarified. "I am simply not available. That is all. I have to go now." I ended the call and blocked both their numbers temporarily. I needed space to drive safely to the cabin without constant interruptions. Within minutes, my parents started calling. I let those go to voicemail too, listening to the increasingly frantic messages as I finished gathering my things. "Jacqueline, call us back immediately," Dad's stern voice commanded. "Your brother is very upset. This is completely unacceptable behavior." "Sweetheart, please reconsider," Mom pleaded in her message. "The children are all dressed up and excited to stay with you. They are crying now. Is that what you wanted?" The guilt tactics were exactly what I had expected, but they still stung. I texted them both the same message. "I am going on a planned vacation." Derek and Jennifer knew I was unavailable and chose to ignore me. "I will call when I return next week." By noon, my social media accounts were flooded with messages from extended family members. Aunt Susan expressing disappointment in my selfishness, Cousin Patrick asking what was wrong with me, Uncle Timothy suggesting I needed to get my priorities straight. The family phone tree had been activated, and everyone had an opinion about my decision to enforce a boundary. I switched my phone to airplane mode, locked my front door, and walked to my car with my suitcase. As I pulled out of my driveway, I caught a glimpse of Derek's SUV still parked across the street. He was on his phone, gesturing wildly, probably trying to find emergency childcare. Jennifer sat in the passenger seat, her face set in a tight expression. The children were still in the back, Emma reading a book, Lucas playing with his dinosaur, little Sophia already napping. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I punishing the children for their parents' behavior? But then I reminded myself, their parents had options. They could have respected my answer 2 weeks ago and made alternative arrangements. They could have asked properly, instead of assuming. They could have taken the children with them on the cruise. This situation was not of my making. With that thought firmly in mind, I drove away, heading toward the mountains and 3 blissful, guilt-free days of solitude. The real storm, I knew, would come when I returned. The Blue Ridge Mountain Retreat was even more beautiful than the pictures online had suggested. Nestled among towering pines with views of snow-capped peaks, my cabin was the perfect combination of rustic charm and modern comfort. A stone fireplace dominated the main room, with plush sofas arranged around it. The kitchen was small but well-equipped. The bedroom featured a king-sized bed with a handmade quilt and windows that looked out over a small frozen pond. For the first 24 hours, I kept my phone off completely, allowing myself to decompress after the confrontation. I hiked the beginner trails near the cabin, built a fire using the stacked wood on the porch, and read half of a novel I had been meaning to start for months. The silence was healing, broken only by the occasional call of birds or the soft creak of branches heavy with snow. On the second day, curiosity got the better of me. I turned my phone back on, bracing myself for the deluge. Over 70 messages and 30 missed calls awaited me. I scrolled through them quickly, noting the pattern: initial anger, escalating panic, reluctant problem-solving, and finally, resentful acceptance. My parents had ultimately stepped in to watch the children, canceling their own plans to accommodate Derek and Jennifer's cruise. Mom's book club, Dad's golf game, their dinner with friends, all sacrificed without complaint. The double standard was glaring. Their plans could be canceled at a moment's notice for Derek, but my clear boundary was treated as an act of family treason. "The kids are with us now," Mom's final text read. "I hope you are happy with yourself." I was not happy exactly. I was sad that it had come to this. Sad that my family could not respect a simple no. Sad that decades of dysfunctional patterns had led to this breaking point. But beneath the sadness was something new. A quiet sense of dignity, of self-respect, of standing in my truth regardless of the fallout. I sent one reply to Mom. "I am sorry you had to change your plans. I love you and the kids, and I will call when I return." Then I silenced my phone again and returned to my peaceful retreat. I spent the days working remotely, taking advantage of the cabin's surprisingly good internet connection to attend my scheduled client meetings via video call. In the evenings, I explored the small towns nearby, discovering a charming bookstore, a cafe with homemade pies, and a local art gallery featuring mountain landscapes. On the 5th day of my stay, I received an unexpected text from my father. "Derek and Jennifer are cutting their cruise short. Coming home tomorrow. Family meeting at our house Sunday at 2. Be there." Not a request, a command. The apple did not fall far from the tree. I considered not going, considered extending my stay at the cabin, considered driving in the opposite direction, and starting a new life somewhere. No one knew me, but I knew that running would not solve anything. This confrontation had been brewing for years, and now it was time to face it head-on. I texted back one word: "Okay." The final 2 days of my mountain retreat were tinged with anxiety about the upcoming family meeting. I rehearsed what I would say, imagined various scenarios, prepared for accusations and guilt trips. But I also treasured these last moments of peace, knowing that whatever happened on Sunday, I had given myself this gift of time, this proof that my needs mattered too. When Sunday arrived, I checked out of the cabin early and drove straight to my parents' house, arriving exactly at 2 o'clock. Everyone was already there, seated around the dining room table like some kind of family tribunal. Mom and Dad at the heads of the table, Derek and Jennifer along one side, 3 empty chairs on the other, one presumably for me, the other symbolic of the children who were conspicuously absent. "The kids are with Jennifer's mother," Mom explained when I asked, her tone suggesting I had no right to inquire after having abandoned them. I sat down in the middle chair across from Derek, folded my hands on the table, and waited. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken accusations. Dad cleared his throat. "I think we all know why we are here. Derek and Jennifer had to cut their vacation short because of complications with childcare." "Complications?" Derek scoffed. "My sister left us stranded with no warning." "I gave you 2 weeks' warning," I corrected quietly. "At Christmas dinner, and again on the phone multiple times." "You knew we had already paid for the cruise," Jennifer interjected. "You knew how important this was to us, and you knew I said no," I replied. "You chose to ignore that and show up at my door anyway." "Enough." Dad held up his hand. "Jacqueline, your behavior was completely irresponsible. Your brother and his wife work hard all year. They deserve that vacation. Family helps family. That is how we raised you. You raised me to be the family helper, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. You raised Derek to be the family taker. From childhood, his needs, his time, his plans have always been more important than mine. That is not true, Mom protested. It is, I insisted. When we were kids, who had to change their plans when someone needed to watch the house? Who had to miss parties to help with chores? Who was expected to drop everything when family needed something? You were always more responsible, Dad said, as if that explained everything. No, I shook my head. I was always more compliant. There is a difference. Derek leaned forward, eyes narrowed. So, this was what? Revenge? Making us pay for some perceived childhood slight? This was me finally setting a boundary after years of being taken for granted, I explained. This was me saying my time has value too. This was me expecting the basic respect of being asked, not told, when you want something from me. We lost $3,000 because of your boundary, Jennifer snapped. The cruise line only refunded half when we had to come back early. You lost $3,000 because you failed to make proper childcare arrangements, I corrected. That is not on me. Of course it is on you. Derek pounded his fist on the table. You have always watched the kids. Always. We had every reason to believe you would this time too. Except I told you I would not, I reminded him. Multiple times. We thought you would come around, Mom admitted softly. You always do. Her words hung in the air, the accidental truth, at the heart of everything. They had dismissed my refusal because history had taught them they could wear me down, that my no did not really mean no, that eventually I would give in to keep the peace. Not anymore, I said simply. Derek's face flushed red. Do you have any idea what you have done? The cruise was a disaster. We were both stressed about the kids. Jennifer cried every night. We fought constantly. We barely enjoyed any of it before having to fly back early. I am sorry you did not enjoy your vacation, I said, genuinely meaning it. But that was the result of your choices, not mine. Our choices? Jennifer's voice rose to a near shriek. We chose to trust that you would be there for us, like you always are. And I chose to finally stand up for myself, I replied. To say no to being taken advantage of. To expect the basic courtesy of being asked, instead of told what I will be doing with my time. So what now? Dad demanded. You just decide you are not part of this family anymore? You do not help out? You do not care about your nieces and nephew? I love Emma, Lucas, and Sophia, I said firmly, and I am happy to spend time with them. But from now on, I need to be asked respectfully, with adequate notice, and with the understanding that I might say no. My time is not automatically available just because I work from home or because I am single. This is ridiculous, Derek muttered. No, what is ridiculous is expecting someone to provide a week of 24-hour childcare with no notice, no please, no thank you, and no compensation, I replied. What is ridiculous is thinking that your vacation is more important than mine. What is ridiculous is showing up at my door with luggage after I explicitly said no. For the first time, my mother looked thoughtful rather than defensive. I never really considered it from that perspective, she admitted quietly. Derek shot her a betrayed look. Mom, do not tell me you are taking her side in this. I am not taking sides, she said. I am just thinking about how we have always operated as a family. We have always operated with Jacqueline as the backup plan, the safety net, the reliable one, who never says no, I pointed out. And I cannot do that anymore. It is not healthy for any of us. The conversation continued for hours, circling through accusations and defenses, old hurts and new boundaries. Derek stormed out at one point, only to return 20 minutes later, slightly calmer but no less resistant to the new reality I was establishing. Jennifer alternated between cold silence and tearful appeals to family loyalty. By the end of that exhausting afternoon, nothing was truly resolved. No grand apologies were offered. No dramatic reconciliations occurred, but something had shifted, almost imperceptibly. A crack had formed in the foundation of our family dynamics, letting in the first tentative rays of a new understanding. As I drove home that evening, emotionally drained but strangely peaceful, I realized that this was just the beginning of a long process of redefining my place in the family. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in my life, I was walking it on my own terms. The weeks following our family confrontation were eerily quiet. Derek and Jennifer went radio silent, not even sending the usual photos of the children that populated our family group chat. Mom called once a week, our conversations polite but shallow, carefully avoiding any mention of the cruise incident. Dad retreated into his characteristic emotional distance, communicating only through Mom when necessary. I had expected anger, continued arguments, perhaps even ultimatums. The silence was somehow worse, a cold, passive-aggressive statement that I had broken something fundamental in our family structure. During those quiet weeks, doubt crept in during my weakest moments. Had I gone too far? Had I damaged these relationships beyond repair? Would my nieces and nephew grow up barely knowing their aunt because of one stand I had taken? Dr. Wilson reassured me during our sessions. This silence is part of the process, she explained. Your family is recalibrating. The old system no longer works, and they have not yet figured out how to operate in this new reality where you have boundaries. The extended family, however, was anything but silent. The family phone tree had been busy, and everyone had an opinion. Aunt Susan sent a scathing email about the importance of family obligations. Uncle Timothy called to lecture me about respecting my elders, somehow equating my brother with parental authority. Cousin Patrick's wife, Amanda, whom I had always been friendly with, surprised me by sending a supportive text. Good for you. Derek has been taking advantage of everyone for years. That single message of support meant more than I could express. It was the first indication that not everyone saw my actions as selfish or unreasonable. February brought another family birthday, my niece Emma turning 9. I sent a gift, art supplies I knew she would love, but received no invitation to her celebration. A week later, Mom sent a group text with photos of the party. I noticed my absence like a physical pain, especially in the image of Emma opening my present. Her face lit up with delight at the professional grade-colored pencils and sketch pad. March arrived with no improvement. I ran into Jennifer at the grocery store, an awkward encounter where she pretended not to see me until we literally collided carts in the produce section. Our exchange was painfully civil, discussing nothing more significant than the quality of the strawberries. When I asked about the children, her answers were clipped, minimal, almost as if she feared I might suddenly demand to see them after weeks of supposedly not caring. They miss you, she admitted finally, a small crack in her armor of resentment. I miss them too, I replied honestly. I would love to see them sometime. She nodded non-committally and steered her cart away, leaving the invitation hanging unanswered in the air between us. Easter approached, traditionally a major gathering in our family. The invitation from Mom came via text, formal and cautious. Easter dinner at 1. Let me know if you can make it. As if I had become a distant acquaintance rather than a daughter, I replied that I would be there, then spent the days leading up to the holiday preparing myself emotionally. Dr. Wilson and I role-played potential scenarios, from cold shoulders to outright confrontations. Remember, you cannot control how they respond, she reminded me. You can only control how you respond to them. Easter Sunday dawned bright and clear. I arrived at my parents' house with a homemade carrot cake and an armful of Easter baskets for the children, unsure of my welcome, but determined to begin rebuilding bridges on my new terms. The initial hour was awkward, conversations stilted and overly polite. Derek maintained a cool distance, speaking to me only when directly addressed. Jennifer was marginally warmer, perhaps softened by our grocery store encounter. The children, however, knew nothing of adult conflicts. Emma and Lucas tackled me with hugs the moment I arrived, Sophia toddling behind them with her arms outstretched, demanding to be picked up. Aunt Jackie, you were gone forever, Lucas declared dramatically. Did you bring us presents? Emma asked, practical as always. Lucas, that is rude, Jennifer admonished, but I waved away her concern. It is okay. And yes, I did bring Easter baskets for you monsters, I replied, delighting in their excited squeals. During dinner, Mom made a visible effort to include me in conversations. Dad asked about my recent design projects with genuine interest. Small steps, but significant ones. The tension remained, hanging over the adults like an invisible cloud, but it had diminished slightly, allowing moments of genuine connection to break through. The real surprise came after dessert, when Derek approached me as I was helping clear the table. Can we talk? He asked stiffly, nodding toward the back porch. We sat on the wicker chairs overlooking Mom's spring garden, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us until Derek finally spoke. Jennifer and I have been seeing a marriage counselor, he said, staring straight ahead rather than looking at me, after the cruise disaster. We fought the entire time, came home early, and kept fighting for weeks. I am sorry to hear that, I said cautiously. The thing is, he continued, the counselor asked us about patterns in our relationship, about how we handle stress and responsibilities. He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. She pointed out that we both tend to offload our problems onto others, particularly you. I said nothing, waiting for him to continue. I am not saying you were right to bail on us, he clarified quickly, but I am saying that maybe we should have actually asked you instead of just telling you our plans. Coming from Derek, this was practically a full apology on his knees. I recognized the effort it took him to admit even this much fault. Thank you for saying that, I replied simply. The kids really have missed you, he added. Emma asks about you constantly. I have missed them too, I said. All of you, actually, he nodded, still not quite meeting my eyes. Maybe you could come over for dinner next Friday? If you are not busy, I mean. And there it was, the first tentative request rather than demand, the first acknowledgement that my time was mine to give, not his to take. I would like that, I said, feeling a small weight lift from my shoulders. As spring turned to summer, our family slowly established new patterns of interaction. Mom stopped automatically volunteering my services whenever someone needed help. Dad began asking about my plans with genuine interest, rather than evaluation. Derek and Jennifer started giving actual notice when they wanted me to watch the children, complete with please and thank you. The most unexpected change came from Jennifer's mother, Margaret, who called me out of the blue in June. I wanted to thank you, she said, surprising me. For what? I asked, confused. For finally standing up to them, she replied with a chuckle. I have been telling Jennifer for years that they take advantage of you, but she never listened. Now they ask me properly when they need help with the grandkids, with reasonable notice. It is refreshing. By July, 6 months after the cruise incident, I was invited to Emma's soccer games, Lucas's t-ball matches, and Sophia's dance recital. I attended them all, gradually rebuilding my relationship with the children I adored. Derek and I established a fragile new understanding, based on mutual respect rather than expectation and obligation. Our parents watched this evolution, with a mixture of relief and bewilderment, occasionally slipping into old patterns, but increasingly mindful of the new boundaries. Mom confessed over coffee one morning. I never realized how much we all leaned on you until you stopped letting us. The road to healing our family dynamics was neither straight nor smooth. There were setbacks, moments when old resentments flared, times when Derek's sense of entitlement resurfaced. But with each interaction, each holiday, each family gathering, we learned to navigate our relationships with greater awareness and respect. And I learned that setting boundaries, though painful and frightening at first, had ultimately strengthened rather than damaged my most important relationships. By December, nearly a year after that fateful Christmas dinner, our family had settled into a new normal. The changes were subtle but profound, visible in 100 small interactions. When Mom needed help preparing for Thanksgiving, she called to ask if I had time, accepting graciously when I could only offer one day instead of 3. When Jennifer wanted a date night with Derek, she texted well in advance. "Would you be available to watch the kids next Friday evening? We would really appreciate it." The most significant transformation, however, was in my relationship with Derek. Our childhood patterns had been deeply ingrained. His role as the entitled golden child, mine as the accommodating helper. Changing those patterns required consistent effort from both of us. There were still moments when he slipped into old habits, times when I had to gently but firmly remind him of my boundaries. But increasingly, those moments became the exception rather than the rule. In early December, Derek invited me to lunch, just the two of us, something that had not happened in years, possibly ever. "I wanted to talk to you about Christmas," he said after we had ordered. "Jennifer and I are planning another cruise." I tensed automatically, bracing for the old pattern to reassert itself. "It is in February," he continued. "President's Day weekend. 3 nights." He pulled out his phone, showing me the details of the booking. "We have already arranged for Jennifer's parents to take the kids. They are excited about it, actually. Margaret wants to do some big winter activities with them." "That sounds perfect," I said, relief washing over me. "I am happy for you both. The thing is," Derek set down his phone, meeting my eyes directly. "I wanted to acknowledge something. I have been thinking about it a lot this year." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "You were right. About everything. About how I treated your time as less valuable than mine. About how I just expected you to be available whenever I wanted something." I sat in stunned silence. In all our years, I had never heard Derek admit he was wrong about anything substantial. "The cruise last January," he continued, "when you refused to watch the kids, I was furious with you. But looking back, I realize how entitled I was being. I never even considered asking you properly, seeing if you were available, respecting that you might have your own plans." "Thank you for saying that," I said quietly. "It took me months to really see it," he admitted. "At first, I just thought you were being difficult. But then I started noticing how often I did the same thing. Just assumed you would be available, got irritated when you were not. The family vacation in July, Mom's birthday in September, the school fundraiser in October. Every time, my first thought was, Jacqueline can handle it." "Old habits," I acknowledged. "Bad habits," he corrected. "Selfish habits, and I am trying to break them." As we finished our lunch, Derek asked about my work, my friends, my plans for the holidays, real questions, born of genuine interest rather than obligation. For perhaps the first time in our adult lives, we connected as equals, as friends even, rather than as the golden son and the reliable daughter. This new equilibrium extended to my relationship with my parents as well. Mom called one evening in mid-December, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Your father and I have been talking," she began, "about last Christmas and everything that happened after." "Mom, we do not need to rehash all that," I said gently. "No, we do," she insisted, "because we owe you an apology. We always put more pressure on you to accommodate everyone else. We expected you to be the flexible one, the one who would give in. And when you finally stood up for yourself, we treated you like you had done something wrong." Her words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I managed. "We are proud of you," she continued, "for establishing healthy boundaries, for teaching us how to respect your time and your needs. It has actually inspired me to do the same with some of my volunteer work." I stepped down from 2 committees that were taking advantage of me. "Really?" I asked, surprised. "Really," she confirmed. "Turns out my time is valuable too." When Christmas arrived again, we gathered at my parents' home as always. The same decorations adorned the tree. The same china graced the table. The same family recipes filled the kitchen with familiar aromas. But beneath these traditions, everything had changed. Emma presented me with a handmade card featuring a drawing of the two of us painting together. Lucas had constructed an elaborate Lego creation he proudly announced was Aunt Jackie's office. Sophia simply climbed into my lap during dessert, her small head tucked under my chin as she dozed off, trusting and content. After dinner, As we all sat around the living room opening presents, Derek pulled out a small envelope and handed it to me. "This is from Jennifer and me," he said. "Merry Christmas, sis." Inside was a gift certificate for a weekend spa retreat at the very mountain resort I had escaped to the previous January. "We thought you deserved some relaxation," Jennifer explained, her smile genuine. No strings attached. Later, as I drove home through the quiet, snow-dusted streets, I reflected on the year's journey. The path had not been easy. Setting boundaries had required courage I had not known I possessed. Maintaining those boundaries had demanded consistency and strength through uncomfortable confrontations and painful silences. But the rewards had been immeasurable. I had discovered my own worth, not as defined by what I could do for others, but as inherent in who I was. I had learned that real love, in families and beyond, thrived on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. And perhaps most importantly, I had found that standing firm in my truth had ultimately brought me closer to the people who mattered most. My phone pinged with a text from Derek. "Thanks for everything this year. You taught us all something important." I smiled, typing back, "Love you too, big brother." Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took you for granted? How did they respond? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's the foundation of healthy relationships and self-respect.